everybody. Just a quick follow on from the stream that we were doing when I had to leave earlier this afternoon. If you recall, what we were trying to do was describe a certain sort of puzzle building rig inside of our gas city. Maybe the actors that would do different kinds of work inside of that system, maybe some workflows that they might follow to ensure that they were making the right sort of thing, and then answering various questions about that so that there's enough clarity to start building. And just before I left, we hit enter on the mayor, and the mayor did some work before we got going. So I haven't seen this yet either, but we can start going through the results of whatever it did. And I guess the hope too is that now that we've got a more practical example of trying to create a puzzle solver, uh, create a puzzle generator, that kind of thing, we'll be able to get more juice out of understanding the various Gas City commands that the mayor is using to kind of do our bidding. So this is about where we got to before I left. That covers everything if you want to go ahead. So we talked about, as a refresher, we were talking about a catalog of games that we don't want to duplicate. And so knowing what's been done is sort of the first step to getting out to that cutting edge, I guess. We've got some code that's going to be written in TypeScript probably. We're going to be targeting mobile. We're going to try and add a simplifier that will ensure that we write nice, clean TypeScript code. We're going to have a playtester, a puzzle generator, and a puzzle solver, that kind of thing. And so these are the last questions that we answered before we cut the stream last time. So go back for that VOD or go check it out on YouTube if you want to catch up from here. All right, so the mayor starts rocking. First, we started adding this new, and I put it inside of our tutor city. We haven't really explored the idea of doing different cities for different purposes locally. I don't know if that feels that necessary. It might be a way of like cleanly separating concerns. It's like very high level to think about right now. But we got our new rig. If you recall, we're calling it inclemental. That having something to do with the weather, something that's incremental, like an incremental puzzle solver. Sort of a joke. All right. And not super like conflicted in Google. All right. We had an antiquarian. This is the one that's going to know everything about puzzle games and ensure that they can detect that we're doing something new, or find out that we're just reinventing the wheel and pivoting. We have the inventor, which is sort of prototyping games off of a concept. The analyst, if I recall correctly, is the one that is actually trying to go through and implement things from the inventor's spec. We have the playtester that's sort of simulating the human playtester. We have the smith that is doing the, is it solving? I don't see the generator on here. I'm trying to remember all of our names. And simplifier. I think if we scroll back up, we're going to see those again. All right, and this is sorry, bad keystroke. I put a lot of junk inside of this log, but here we are. Playtester solves like a human. The analyst builds the reference solver, combinatorics, and code. And then the Smith is for random generation, and yeah, just plain old software engineering. Cool. Okay, so puzzles come from the Smith, the maker of the puzzle, and puzzles are solved by the analyst. I think that makes sense. Okay, let's get back to where we were. Okay, so we're adding these different agents, and let's see. We are writing the prompts for each agent. So each one of the agents gets its own prompt, as we went over in previous videos. Tools that you could use. Let's see, web access to inspect canonical sources, file system access to certain directories, things to manipulate the beads, the tasks that it will do. That makes sense. How to work. Your specialty. You remember pencil puzzles. We know all kinds of stuff. Curate the catalog. The gate that protects the founding constraint, that we don't ship anything that anyone else has already shipped. We have the entry schema that the mayor worked on with us in the earlier conversation. And then we've got the list of entries themselves. This is interesting that it's made some pending review. Write the stage entry. For each entry, identify the mathematical formalism underlying the puzzle. Yeah, I think there's a hypothesis here that I tried to bring forward that a lot of these puzzles do collapse to kind of the same thing, to like a root finding or that kind of thing. Pathing, you know, graph coloring, all kinds of stuff like that. All right. After review by the simplifier human, then they graduate. This is interesting. I didn't know the simplifier would check to see if a catalog entry is correct. But yeah, getting a second pair of eyes I think is important. It's a kind of weird idea. I think that when it gets a sort of weird idea like this, some of it has to do with the overlapping, like ambiguous definition of these terms. If you're like, I need somebody who could review this for, you know, exactness or cleanness or simplicity. Oh, I have one of those. I have a role that's kind of named like that. I'll use that name. And the purposes of each of these agents may not seem to line up quite like that. Yeah, this is a good point. We didn't really talk about this, but I think that's true. Read the kernel. Identify its formalism and constraint family. It's possible that this is a little bit premature. We might need to get like a design out of the inventor before we could get this right. But yeah, just based on the description, it could say, you know, there is a puzzle kind of like that, or I've never heard of anything like that. Yeah. Examine the actual rule shape. Write a novelty card. What's new and what's not new. That's cool. Be precise and citation driven. That's great. This is slowly linked with a loop replaced by a Hamiltonian path. Okay, interesting. Don't fabricate a duplicate and don't wave something through because it sounds novel. Look it up. Right. Sounds good. Interesting. It looks like some printing didn't happen inside of the shell itself. So maybe what you should be doing is going and reading through all of these in directory. All right, so let's head to Gas County. Hmm. Where did the agents got written into the city? Here we go. It's funny how they all are sort of job names. Yeah, not like Joe. Okay, so our first one, I think we finished reading this, but we can just double check. Yeah, the mayor and the human decide what to do with your verdict. Check. All right, let's look at the next one. The next one I think was going to be inventor. Yeah. All right, you're the inventor. Rule designer. You take a kernel idea, usually a vague what if, turn into a candidate rule set that someone could actually try to solve. Make opinions concrete enough to evaluate. Board kind, given information, win condition, constraints. The intended formalism. I think that it might fill that in. uh, I don't consider myself an expert on that. Um, intended visual payoff. What kinds of inferences to make. And test spec on at least two small instances. This often happens in like my pencil puzzles. Like they have a small size board, and it's pretty easy to solve that because there isn't too much information to fill in, and the chains of deductions can't get too deep because at some point you just deduce everything in the board. Let's see. When the analyst or playtester returns a critique, treat it as data. Revise the spec. 3 to 5 rounds of playtesting, huh? All right, interesting. Good. I don't know if this tone thing actually causes it to be more creative or act with higher temperature, as one might say. Like one of the features of agents is that they have a range of deterministic to non-deterministic behavior. Um, so at their most predictable, there are they're not, I wouldn't say they're at their least creative, but they are perhaps not going to give unexpected output, and maybe that means that they're not going to range far enough when they're trying to be creative. So I'm curious if this actually will get picked up on by the model and used in a way that kind of simulates actually setting that parameter really high, um, and sort of unpredictable. Okay. All right. We had analyst, playtester, simplifier, and smith. I guess analyst would be next. And we can. I'm not intending to sort of like bore you with this process. I do think it's for me. This is genuinely interesting. Like, are we going to be able to make my sort of puzzle solving heist team out of these definitions, that kind of thing? And some of this seems a little funky, like a little bit vague or a little bit like, you know, there is a certain how, right? Like, so suppose that the definition said your specialty, um, you are able to float in the air with anti-gravity. You can make food appear out of the air. You can reach out of the terminal and touch the face of the human client. you know, it could say that, but it couldn't do that, right? And I think that the interesting thing about this is that you want to be able to talk to them set them up in the way that is perhaps consistent with their capabilities. So if it says here, you're the engineering heaviest agent in the rig and the most rigorous, that's cool. That's cool. I mean, is that true? Uh, does saying it make it so? This is one of those weird things that I think that we really need to explore as we're trying to build capabilities. And one thing that is interesting about this is that statements like this don't need to be factual to be useful. Maybe making an aspirational statement is actually helpful and is actually something that we can evaluate this agent's performance by, judge whether or not it's meeting the standard that's we tried to set here. And if not, then convert that into lessons and feedback. The simplifier will review what you write before it merges. Produce a reference solver. Produce some deduction techniques. Um, this is interesting too, because it's sort of like, where did these come from? Are they unique to each puzzle? It sort of seems like it. Yeah. Every single puzzle that we make is going to have like a reference solver. Every single puzzle we make is going to have techniques that are those heuristic kind of things. A fun metrics profile. So this is where we're talking about, can we actually translate the deduction process into the into this idea of fun? Is this what's fun about these puzzles? No clue. I guess that's an experimental thing that we're going to have to deal with. Cross-checking. Produce a SAT CSP encoding. Yeah. Use it as an oracle. Treat it as authoritative. I think this is kind of cool. It seems like each one of the pencil puzzles I'm familiar with, just by the nature of being deterministically deductive, um, you should be able to brute force any of them in a reasonable amount of time. And I guess what I believe is that the reason I believe that is because the puzzles have been set up by humans for humans. And so this will be an interesting landmine if there's a puzzle that isn't fun or fails these kind of human heuristics, or but it passes, like, yeah, it's a unique, there's a unique SAT solution for this. um, yeah, it's true that if the solution is different, right, if the SAT solution is, if we assume that it's correct, then any other solution is probably wrong. Run uniqueness sweep. Ah, okay. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's helpful. Um, yeah. As we said, like, one of the constraints of pencil puzzles is that there should be one unique solution. And sometimes that's used by solvers to um, actually solve the puzzle. Um, but it's also useful in the sense of, like, telling it, giving us a sort of heuristic for how close we are to getting down to a unique solution. Maybe we can add a clue here or there and strategically reduce the one to a unique solution, something like that. Cool. Cool. All right. Well, here's hoping. We still have a playtester, simplifier, and Smith. Let's look at simplifier next because it was supposed to come behind the agent that we were just talking about. All right. Simple. Well factored. Certain characteristic problems with TypeScript, one assumes. Maintainability. Is that a premium? We've got some stuff here about don't repeat yourself. Um, don't over engineer things. Interesting. Some people like don't repeat yourself at number of 2. Get rid of everything. This one is like 3 similar copies is fine. Okay, let's see how that goes. Try not to increase the number of dependencies. If you could do something in pure JavaScript, that's great. Cool. This is interesting too. We might want to rewrite this so that it says something like do PRs in GitHub. Generally, we could be like working inside of like a private repository in GitHub. We could be creating merge requests and then using the PR process to, create feedback using this guy, and then fix that feedback and go in a sort of cycle between the implementer and the reviewer until everyone's happy. Make suggestions. Cool. Interesting. Again, I think that pushback is healthy when you're working with agents. So the more they push back, probably the better. Let's talk about playtester next. And like I said, I should really be collating my feedback for the mayor. Like this thing like we're gonna use GitHub, we're gonna do PRs. But right now I'm just sort of reading through so that to kind of get a taste of what is this process of trying to define a rig with the mayor actually result in. And I think so far I'm kind of good with it. Again, we have this sort of like meta issue of like can you sort of speak these things into being or not? I don't know. I'm curious. Let's try and test it before we try and fiddle with it a little bit. Like if we learn that the playtester is not a good taste agent or opinionated, that kind of thing. All right. Ah, solving by eating this is a guilty pleasure. I do actually believe this about pencil puzzles. Like, you could imagine that, like, if say that like we made a pencil puzzle, and I'm not saying that we should do this. Let's say that we did make one where it required you to find a bunch of moves that you would make that would definitely cause you to have multiple solutions. And you need to reject them one by one. And rejecting them is the process by which you solve the puzzle. Until finally, by the time that you have eliminated the last sort of, alternate possibility, the puzzle is finished. I don't think I've ever seen one quite like that before, where that's the main thing that you're doing. uh, that's kind of interesting concept, I think. All right. So the that would be an interesting, like, I think whenever I see a statement like this, I want to say Well, what if you could just require it? You know, um, it's a good heuristic for finding weird things to do. All right. Yeah, hypothesis costs, long hypothesis chains. Yeah, bland end game. I don't know. This is an interesting one. I'll give an example. There's a puzzle in Simon Tatham called Palisades, where you're trying to fence in equally sized areas, and like Slitherlink, you know how many lines are filled in on each side of the palisade. But unlike Slitherlink, this weird thing happens where there could be many loops inside of the puzzle and many borders and many regions that like share fences. And so there are certain assumptions that you can make in Slitherlink, like there's only one entry and one exit from every node at most one that actually doesn't hold inside of that one. And it can be really fun to do this puzzle type. Um, but there's a style of doing it where maybe you eliminate all of the places where a line can't be. And I find that this manner of solving the puzzle kind of fun. The last thing that you have to do in in that puzzle mode, once you've solved the puzzle, is to go actually through and click one by one on all of the remaining lines in a fairly large board. So yeah, I would definitely say that that's an unfun way of solving that puzzle with that sort of you know, you could say handicap, right? Sometimes it's fun to solve pencil puzzles with personal handicaps. Doing the same thing over and over again, I think that's probably right. Um, this is sort of why there are sort of multiple separate rules that the player needs to follow in a lot of pencil puzzles. Um, so say in Slitherlink, it's there's going to be exactly one loop, and you got to follow all the numbers. And sometimes you're using one of the rules, or so you're inferring something from one of the rules, and another time you're inferring something from another one of the rules. So, for instance, in Slitherlink, if you cut off the loop prematurely and there are a bunch of unvisited squares, um, then that violates the rule that there should be exactly one loop that goes through the whole puzzle. Um, or another one might be when there are two numbers that are sort of dense next to each other. There are certain configurations where you definitely can't have only one entry and one exit from each node if you fill them in a certain way. And so that eliminates certain possibilities how you fill them in. So yeah, you kind of alternate between all of the different rules that are on offer. You try to figure out which one is applicable here and which one sort of takes you forward. Yeah, I think I kind of buy this. Local only thinking. Yeah, you just go and go and go. Yeah, I definitely buy this one too. It is kind of fun to sort of have the board in this sort of half completed state, and then you're trying to figure out, can I derive a contradiction? It's very fun when something is happening over here, and then just through the arrangement, it's almost like a circuit diagram where you're like, oh wow, if I flip this one over here, then this long chain of consequences, I need to flip this one over here. Yeah, that's fun in my opinion. Yeah, some of the pictures can be really beautiful, especially like something like Picross, maybe like the biggest example of this. Picross being a game where you have to you're given a series of light and dark squares for each row and column, and you have to figure out where exactly to color in the picture in order to satisfy all of the constraints on the rows and columns. There's only one way to do it, and ideally, it makes a cool looking picture. Cool. Seems fine. Think of the tractable part of fun. You may quote imaginary authorities. Is that true? Do I want that? We'll see. And this, if you'll recall, is our generator. Yeah, I do think this might actually be how some of these work. I haven't studied this problem area in detail, but I think that this is a way to um, think about how the how in reality these programs do work. Huh. This idea of visual payoff is really interesting. Um, Maybe there are some pencil puzzles that have bland solutions. They're not degenerate solutions, but maybe they're more random. They don't paint a picture of any kind. They just are what they are. Um, but they can be kind of cool. They're also a record of what you've been sort of figuring out, right? And that can be kind of fun. Something like Dominosa, it's just a bunch of where are the dominoes. It doesn't matter what it looks like, not really. The fun of it was getting to the point where the whole puzzle was filled in correctly. So it'll be interesting to see how much we can lean on this one. Mm, all right, cool, interesting. So this is our little our merry band here. All right, let's see. We were over here. So I think we got through all the prompt templates. I'll just skip past that part in the output. Ah, incremental. All right, let's go look at this stuff. So this is rig specific stuff now, I think. So we leave the level of the city where all the agents were defined, and we step down into incremental. Let's look at the CLAUDE.md it made. Cool. Yeah, a lot of this is stuff that we went over with the mayor. All right, let's see. It's interesting how the infrastructure is all on disk. That's not totally surprising. I think, like, in this context, it's, and certainly in the context of we're going to be storing all this information in like a Git repository potentially. Um, this kind of makes sense. But there are other definitions that might also make sense. For instance, like when we make a puzzle or design a new proposal or whatever, we're going to throw it into the remote database, and it will have a schema that reflects kind of this stuff without actually storing it inside of the project. There are reasons to do that, I suppose. Um, One of them being perhaps that like you can iterate in private. You can potentially publish the project without publishing the crown jewels of, how are your tests being made, and how are your puzzles, what are your puzzle designs, and what's their implementation, what are your conclusions about how this is fun, exploring your research and things. um, so that's something that we might get around to, right, is trying to package that separately so that the the raw application and all that stuff is present and visible and testable, and some of this other stuff might be proprietary, such as it is. Yeah, things this rig doesn't do yet. I'm sure this is kind of a moving target. All right, but yeah, this is interesting. It's sort of like a future work section. It's very, very optimistic, very, very positive. And yeah, I like that, I suppose. Okay. Okay, so we looked at the Claude. Um, Interesting. Okay, Slither link. Yeah, it's funny. It's also called inside of this is called Loopy inside of Simon Tatham, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it's funny that it's not using that as a reference, but no matter. Equivalent to a per edge Boolean satisfaction problem with parity constraints at each grid vertex, degree 0 2. This is that thing that we're going to have exactly 2 or exactly 0 entries and exits on each vertex, because that's how you draw the non-intersecting closed loop. If it comes in, then it has to go out and eventually get back to the beginning. Closely related to single cycle problems on the dual graph. This is, I think, the kind of information that is going to help us figure out the similarities across all of these different puzzle types. Clue arithmetic, yeah. So this has to do, in slither length, this has to do with how many lines are there around this cell. It's up to 3, because in the basic version, it's a grid of squares, and if we had a square that had 4 lines around it, then that would be a complete loop. So there's only one loop like that, and it's kind of degenerate. Yep, there it is in Simon Tatham's. Yeah, I guess Nicole has a Slitherlink app, which more power to them, of course. A variant with shaded regions instead of cells. That's kind of cool. Yeah, the version in Simon Tatham has all kinds of tilings, as I mentioned. I don't know, maybe more than 2 dozen. A lot of fun. My favorite one has these pentagons, but anyway. Yeah, I think that is a good set of the rules. Yeah, so that's a good example, in my opinion. Ah, this is interesting. Yeah. So here we are going through different mechanics of different pencil puzzles. Um, yeah, this one has to do with drawing islands of certain sizes without creating waters that are too fat. It's sort of like islands surrounded by rivers, if you want sort of a visual metaphor there. Draw a single loop. Yep. Draw paths between endpoints. I'm not sure. Yeah, maybe I'd recommend. Maybe I don't see that one. Tense. Tense is kind of fun. Tense is like there are a bunch of trees in the field. Every every tree has exactly one tent next to it. No tents are adjacent to each other in their neighborhood, and there are row and column constraints that say how many tents there are in a given row or column. Sounds pretty fun. This one I would say I was talking about Palisades earlier. I'd probably put polyomino in with Palisades. The regions are part of the answer. Is Shikaku Palisades? Let's see if it says here and citate them really fast. Nicole call it 5 cells. I like playing 5 cells with 15 cells, incidentally. Okay. Um, yeah, lots more puzzle types for me to explore when I get some time. Yeah. The original language name or the English name. This one is about you need to light up all of the empty space in a room that is full of walls, and you can only put one lantern in each row or column. If you have two, well, not exactly just row or column. If two lanterns can see each other, then that's forbidden. So if you could draw a straight line from one lantern to another. But yeah, surprisingly, the only one solution in that puzzle. Oh, and also at some squares, you know the number of lanterns that have to be next to this particular square. Variance. Cool. I think this is good, honestly. Definitely worth starting with. Definitely not ridiculous. Yeah. Sources. Apple App Store. Lots of archives. We haven't gone through and read any of these yet. Um, so yeah. It'll be really interesting to see what it comes up with there. Okay. So I think we went through everything that it made. Oh, the formulas. We haven't done the formulas yet. The formulas, if you recall, are workflows that are going to get run step by step. That can be either done as a sort of one-shot um, recipe, or can be broken out step by step into each individual beat. Sorry, I got a little hiccup here. All right. Formulas. So we've only started with these two. We've got catalog and just, and that's the one that's going to go read all of our different sources and bring games into our knowledge base, basically. Mm. Yeah, it's interesting how it came up with a schema for itself to kind of save temporary results. And obviously, it's going to be like, where's the input for each one of these steps? So the output is kind of like a promise that the next step is going to depend upon. So each step is durable. All right. Yeah. We've got formula for source name and source URL. So that's input to the top of the workflow, essentially. And then we're going to get source name and source URL implanted into each one of these commands. You are the antiquarian. Um, does this actually is the agent going to say, uh, I guess I'm curious about this. Like, if you sling this over to like my butler who is working on a book show, is it going to know who the hell the antiquarian is? Is it going to say, "Oh, I look at my identity. I am not the person that you're looking for," um, and then exit out and sling the work to the antiquarian? Maybe it should say, "Sling the work to the antiquarian." Yeah. If you are the antiquarian, keep going. Again, like saying that the butler is the antiquarian doesn't will that into being. Kind of curious about that. This is check if you're in the inclemental rig. Again, it's sort of like, um, who am I? Why am I here? Yeah. Every all of these formulas should get really existential really quick, especially if they're intended to be completed by a certain sort of agent, you know, with a certain prompting. This is a funny thing here, where it's like implicitly this task is supposed to be done by a certain type of agent, and that's almost like it should be here, kind of in the description or um, as one of the variables potentially, or you know, we should be doing some kind of integrity check right here, not just telling you you are the antiquarian. You know, I am curious about that. So after the formulas, all right. So it's telling us that we're all done. There are decisions that are still pending our call. Catalog seeding cadence. Yeah, do Nicoli first. Yeah, I agree. Let's talk about that. All right. We need to get out rolling. Good. Um, do Nicoli first to see how it works. To shake out the process. This is like a and if we learn how to um, read all the entries to the catalog, um, let's internalize lessons for how to do that for the antivariant. Clarification question about the catalog ingest formula. This formula. In the top of the description, step one, top of the survey step description, at the beginning of description, the text reads, "You're the antiquarian." what would be the expected behavior if this formula was slung to some other agent? Should they sling the work to the antiquarian? Should this be couched as an integrity check or conditional instead of a prompting type assertion? If I make it think with max effort, does that mean I did a good humaning? I don't know. Well, I think after we get an answer to this, we'll probably hang it up for the night. I'm as curious as you to see how the ingestion goes, but we can save that for tomorrow. Did we leave out anything? Did we leave anything uninspected? Oh yeah, we could go through the rest of this formula while the mayor thinks about that. Again, it's like a confirm rig context. It's interesting to me that this seems like a step, right? Uh, in a well-designed workflow, this would be a step and it would have an output. And you could couch this as a shell test command that could exit one. And so it's interesting how there are many sub-steps inside of here that a stickler might write in terms that are each individual, that each carry a certain promise, that each feed output to another dependent step. And so it's really interesting to me that it's chosen to write these formulas in terms of certain substeps without actually going all the way there and like writing a directed acyclic graph that has all the tasks with all the appropriate dependencies. We kind of know that it knows how to do it. It knows how to write projects into beads and do their parent-child relationships just fine. This one too. You are the antiquarian. Exit criteria. Very cool. It doesn't say what to do if it doesn't pass the exit criteria. Again, this is sort of like this feels like a happy path, kind of. And when we say happy path, we mean just imagine that everything is going to go well. And assuming that everything goes well, we'll carry the process to the end and everything will be fine. And so, have we checked the exception paths where you're not the antiquarian or the survey index doesn't exist, even though we did a bunch of steps and maybe we did a bunch of work? That kind of thing. Like really robust workflows will cover every possibility somehow. Interesting. One thing that's kind of funny about this is it implies a certain overlapping vocabulary, like because we're trying to detect collisions, right? Like if the formalisms are stated in such a way that they're slightly different, even though they boil down to the same thing. Um, and there are certain ways that this could happen, right? Like there's potentially like uh, say like dualities between um, matrix transformations and certain like geometrical transformations, right? And if it's not clear which one you're talking about or that those two things are equivalent, then you'll come up with a lot of things that are sort of like, well, these things are different, but actually they're isomorphic to each other. We're trying to avoid that pretty bad, but if I don't have the sufficient vocabulary to check the antiquarian at this point, I don't know how I'm going to be able to detect problems like that. Yeah, it did say that the simplifier was going to quality gate things, but it's not a generic quality gate, right? It's supposed to be like refactoring TypeScript code or something like that. Yeah. Again, with these substeps, I will ask the mayor about that at some point too. All right. Let's see what we got here. Hmm. It is like we did change his mind. A prose assertion doing routing work. This has to do with zero framework cognition as well. um, it's the dual of it is zero cognition framework, right? Don't send a cognition to do a framework's job. And it's the same way the other way around. Don't send a framework to do cognition's job. Cool. All right. So it's going through and kind of fixing those. I like that. And now it's actually going and doing stuff. It's yeah, trying to run this on Nikodi and see what we can see about their puzzles. So I guess we'll leave it there. I'll be really curious to see how it goes and what we get out of the catalog. So as always, thanks for watching, and I hope that this has been interesting. Oh, hmm. Okay, okay. It says. All right. One last thing here. Oops, and I should be scrolling back, not rolling back. Okay, quick validated. The way the mayor could do it. All right, yeah, sure. All right, back to yeah. Yeah, great. Proceed. Yeah, Great, let's do plan A. Of course, we're going to want to get an antiquarian session going, and there's a lot of reasons why we want to do that. We are sort of exercising the gas city and making the mayor do the work in canonical fashion. Um, oops, I keep doing this. Um, great, let's do plan A to validate. And you can learn about dispatching to the antiquarian leader. All right, and I guess tomorrow we're going to follow up and see how it does. Okay, with that, I hope this has been entertaining for you. Certainly, it's interesting for me as we combine this learning about AI with, you know, beloved puzzle genre, at least for me. So hopefully at some point we'll actually get to the puzzle idea I thought of. So hope you all have a good night.